support team is very diligent in uploading these videos and making them available on the Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel. And that channel, I can say, is also very good at organizing things so that they all fall under these playlists. So if you look for the playlist, this one is, I think, called like Teachings to the Assembly. So if you go there, you can find the classes that perhaps you missed. So anyway, now we are here at teaching the 15th teaching, so halfway through actually. Halfway through. So 14 and 13 and 14, you know, I think I noticed that in fact 13 and 14 it seems to be focused on Jikten Sumgön, saying how no matter what level of awakening you are striving for, that it equally applies for those striving for the result of a hearer, or the result of a solitary realizer, or the result of a complete and perfect Buddha. Regardless of which of these three types of awakening that you are striving for, it is equally important to abandon, to be done with, to clear the three main kleshas, and of course with all the other attendant kleshas that arise from these basic three. And to do that effectively, he says, then we need to be able to achieve the meditative absorption and also the meditative equipoise, probably different words in Tibetan. But I say that, you know, I feel that for the most part, Jikten Sumgön used these terms in a non-technical sense. So then if we become too focused on trying, on making distinctions, saying, oh, here he's using the equivalent of what's called dhyana or jhana, and here he's using the equivalent of what's called samadhi, and here he's using the equivalent of what's called samahita. I think we may, in some cases, I think he was using it in one sense to contrast it from another sense, but in many other cases, I think these terms for him, he used them interchangeably. So meditative absorption probably translates dhyana or jhana, which is samten. Then meditative equipoise probably translates nyamsha, samahita, and then meditative concentration often would be the translation for samadhi, tingesen. See, so these discussions on samadhi or tingesen, if we try to apply a universal standard to what it means, you know, it's next to impossible. So one very good example of how tingesen is used, or samadhi, you can see it in this very famous sutra that is an important sutra, especially for Kagyupas, followers of Kagyu Mahamudra, which is this sutra called the Samadhi Raja Sutra, the king of samadhis. So in the Samadhi Raja Sutra, so the title of the sutra says that this is the king of samadhis. And when you look at, you say, okay, so what is the samadhi that is the king of samadhis? And if you look, you know, it has next to nothing that you and I would call, you know, something that comes as a result of sitting quietly. Samadhi in the Samadhi Raja is, I would argue, like, I mean, don't take my word for it, has been translated, the sutra. Go to 84,000, that website, 84,000.co, like 84, like the numbers, 84000.co. Samadhi Raja Sutra is translated there. And when you look at the contents of the Samadhi Raja Sutra, at best you can say, if you're going to say, so the notion of Samadhi in the Samadhi Raja is what? Is an attitude, a basic standpoint that comes as a result of certain understanding, certain realization, certain confidence in how the way things are. It's a certain mindset, that is the result of cultivation, of course. But it is not meditative concentration. So it's the king of samadhis. So anyway, big footnote, come back to teaching 13 and 14. Teaching in 13 and 14 is saying, no matter which of the three levels of awakening you strive for, the problem, so to say, to be dispelled are the three main kleshas, and with all the attendant 84,000, all that has to be dispelled. All that has to be done with. And you do that by, it says in the beginning of teaching 13, by establishing the meditative equipoise, or the meditative absorption of calm abiding and special insight. Shine and Laktung, Shamata and Vipassana. And there also, Shamata and Vipassana are loaded terms in Buddhist context. And so again, in different contexts used by different people, sometimes each of these terms have very specific meanings, which is used in contrast to other possible meanings. And at other times, it is not used in such a specialized manner. Here, I would say 13 and 14, Kyopa uses them in both senses. Sometimes you can see that he's using it in contrast to something else and highlighting a specific quality of what calm abiding is, and highlighting a specific quality to what special insight is. At other times, he uses it more generally. Teaching 13, most focus on encouraging his disciples to develop this stability of mind that comes from, primarily comes from, calm abiding. Letting the mind settle. Letting the mind settle in an even way, in a stable way. And there he actually quotes Shantideva's chapter 8, some parts of chapter 8. And there I talked about, right, how in Shantideva's chapter 8, it says that, the first element, if you really want to cultivate this mind that settles evenly, in a stable manner, first, again, you need to develop an attitude towards distractions. Then that attitude combined with specific techniques, specific methods. In fact, chapter 8 of Shantideva does talk about how, because we're distracted by bodies, our own bodies, bodies of others, exaggerating how wonderful, how beautiful, how pleasurable our bodies are, that bodies of others are. So then Shantideva says, now you systematically go through each part of what constitutes this body. And in doing that exercise, develop some understanding about nature of this body and what is all the fuss over. So even there, right, already insight is implicated. And so it's not like you practice calm abiding to the exclusion of insight. They mutually support each other. So teaching 14, Gampopa focus more on this insight, this special insight, lakdong. This lakdong, ultimately the lakdong for him is the lakdong or the special insight that pertains to understanding the nature of our minds. And in understanding the nature of our minds, then we can easily understand the nature of what the mind perceives, and so on and so forth, into the nature of all phenomena. For ultimately, right, it's the mistake is at the level of the mind. The mistake that produces samsara. And therefore the solution, what we call nirvana, the end of samsara, can only also occur when the right work is done on the mind. So primarily for special insight is the special insight that arises from understanding, realizing nature of mind. And in realizing nature of mind, nature of phenomena is understood. Now, the 15th teaching. The precious teacher taught the following. The samsara with its three realms is a bottomless and boundless ocean of suffering. All of us beings, as numerous as space is vast, are without any refuge, protector, or support. No matter how much suffering we may have already experienced, there will never be a time when it comes to an end or finishes. And there will never be a time when it comes to an end or finishes by its own accord. So this is what is implied here. So no matter how much suffering that you have experienced, don't think that, there is a finite amount of suffering, and if I just finish suffering them, then samsara will disappear. So Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the opening passage, and the introduction, which I said is the greatest thing ever written, insofar as how to succinctly summarize and summarize and point out, what is the problem and what is the solution. I absolutely think, I do, that the opening passage of Gampopa's Jewel Ornament, that you need to look again and again and again and again and again and again. And such a clear and succinct way. He lays out all of samsara and nirvana in 2 columns. And there, one of the points he makes is like, samsara is endless. Samsara has a capacity to feed itself. So if you don't do something about it, it will continue endlessly. But again, right, samsara is not like a place, right? Saying that it will end doesn't mean like, we all used to go to, I don't know, whatever we think samsara is. We all used to go to Las Vegas, So Las Vegas is a place, samsara. These days we have to be careful to say where is samsara, otherwise it might even cause like problems to that place. Let's say we all used to go to Las Vegas, right? And then we all, when it's not like that. Samsara is not a place like that. That's the point. So it's not as if, samsara is a place like Las Vegas. Oh, we all go meet in Las Vegas. And then I have put an end to samsara. So it doesn't mean, right, that now Las Vegas have disappeared from the planet. Other people can still go because it is a place. So regardless of, it's a place, a physical location. So regardless of whether I go there anymore or you go there anymore, other people still goes. Samsara is not a place. So each of us have our own samsara. There's a saying like that. Each of us suffer our peculiar type of samsara. Because why? Samsara is a matter of the heart and not a physical location. Likewise, nirvana is a matter of the heart. To be free is to be free there. To be bound is to be bound there. Right? So this samsara, if we leave this bondage alone, so to say, leave alone, it's not going to exhaust itself. So, this is also when we say, like practically what this means is, you need to look at your own confusion, your own situation, your own mess, so to say, and resolve, I'm going to put an end to it. This is it, I don't want it anymore. When we just think of what is suffered in the three lower realms, our hearts quake like the leaves of a kimshuka tree. This tree, famous for the leaves, when winds blow, they just rattle a lot. Shake it that way. Therefore, we have no choice but to practice the precious dharma. So here he wants to emphasize practicing the Buddha Dharma. What is this Dharma like? What is known as the Dharma of the perfectly complete Buddha, the exalted one? In its essence, is nothing but the mind free from attachment, aversion, and delusion. Again, he comes back to this point. The three poisons. When the mind is freed from the three poisons, that is the entire Dharma. The precious wish-fulfilling jewel, called King of Powers, serves as a metaphor for this mind. It must go through the three stages of washing and polishing, and then be set atop a victory banner. After that, it can be asked for anything, and whatever you desire or need will arise. When gold is desired, gold will arise and not something else. When jewels and wealth are desired, they will arise and not something else. So this is the mythology of the wish-fulfilling jewel called the King of Powers. It says that if you are able to find such a wish-fulfilling jewel, and often they are hidden among common rocks and stones. But if you have the skill of identifying that, actually that piece is a wish-fulfilling jewel, not yet. Its powers cannot yet be used. It has to be polished, cleansed. In other words, the impurities have to be removed. Then it says here it has to be set on top of a victory banner. Then offerings have to be made. Then, supplications have to be made. Then whatever you ask for can be fulfilled. So he says, this is how our mind is. Our mind is this wish-fulfilling jewel. So we need to polish it. We need to remove the stains and the impurities, and we need to exalt it. That's the meaning of putting it above a victory banner. If you denigrate your mind, if you denigrate your mind, your heart, your potential, if you denigrate yourself, in other words, and keep thinking, not possible, not possible. this is too hard, or this is too challenging, if you keep denigrating yourself, it's not going to, your mind is not going to be a wish-fulfilling jewel. When it has that ability. Now, if you just elevate without polishing, which is what some of us do with ourselves, "Oh, I'm so great, I am so mighty, I am so smart, I am so good," but no polishing, then it also won't work as a wish-fulfilling jewel. It will just be like a piece of rock, elevated up high. Everybody else would look and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, wish-fulfilling jewel, wish-fulfilling jewel." So this mind, if it is not polished, this jewel, if it is not polished and simply elevated, also useless. If you polish it and you don't elevate, that means you polish it, then you keep it in the closet. It also cannot fulfill wishes, so it needs to be polished and elevated. Then he says, whatever you ask for, it can give you that. In the same way, when it is employed in practice with an aspiration, when the heart mind is employed in practice with an aspiration to awakening of a hearer, and then the result of a hearer will come. With an aspiration of a solitary realizer, that result will come. With that of aspiring for full awakening, then it will come that way. There is one essence to these three types of awakening. And what is that essence? The essence is that the mind is free from these kleshas, these mental defilements. Then, although the essence is freedom from mental defilements, but depending on what kind of aspiration, then the result that comes accordingly. Just as a footnote, it's interesting to see how much Gampopa uses this or refers again and again to the three types of awakening. Because really, for all intents and purposes, Buddhism in Tibet from the beginning, already people are sold on, of the three types of awakening, only the third type, the type of a complete and perfect Buddha, is worth pursuing for and is a real final destination. The other two is not worth it. It's not final. We need not get into the debate of, is it or is it not? I'm just making an observation that for all intents and purposes, Tibetan Buddhism is always, the third is the best, the third is the best. And they don't even bother to talk much about the other two, except to make fun of it or to put it down. But here, Gampopa, this phrase, the three types of awakening, it's so maybe, I don't know, maybe I think in the 12th century, the scenario is maybe not as settled and also not as polemical. Like only the third is best, the other two is for idiots. Maybe that sentiment, is not so strongly at that time. But anyway, this is just a footnote. Now here he actually, again, the next three parts, he talks about, he goes into a little bit more detailed about the Dharma as it pertains to those who aspire the goal of the hearers, and the Dharma as it pertains to those who aspire the goal of solitary realizers, and then the Dharma as it pertains to those who aspire to become full and complete Buddhas. Thus, the first time the wheel of Dharma teachings was turned, the four truths of the nobles were taught, mainly for the hearers, for those who follow the path of the hearers. Someone with the disposition of a hearer sees the nature of suffering in this samsara, and sees it as a pit of glowing embers. So, seeing the sufferings and the confusion of samsara, recognizing it like a pit of burning coals, basically. Moreover, seeing that it arises from craving, they primarily abandon desire. So out of the three poisons, they are the type that most focus on the burdens of attachment and craving. And so mainly they work on abandoning that. But as Gampopa here says, but nonetheless, in the process of abandoning craving, the other two afflictions are also abandoned along the way. So this is actually very interesting, And generally, the three poisons are the culprits. But when working on abandoning them, there is one way of doing it where primarily you're focused on abandoning craving or attachment. But if it's true result of awakening, the other two needs to be abandoned and will be abandoned, will be relinquished as well. So in this way, those who go the path of the hearer, because they see how terrifying samsara is, and they see how, as the Four Noble Truths, identifies craving, Trishna, as the cause. So faithful to what is taught in the Four Noble Truths, those who follow the path of hearers say we need to abandon that. So from the two truths, the truth of the origin of suffering and of suffering, they see how samsara arises. And thus, to abandon it, to relinquish samsara, to be free from samsara, they practice the antidote, the truth of the path, the Eightfold Path of the Noble Ones. With this, they strive to attain the truth of cessation. As it is taught, when there is freedom from craving, there is no renewed existence. Existence here is confused existence. When there is no desire, then there is no more suffering, no more sorrow. Desire, it doesn't mean, you waking up, me waking up and not feeling like getting out of bed, that's not no desire. That's different, yeah. This is talking about no more entanglements, yeah. Getting entangled with your blanket in bed on a cold morning, that's not the goal here. So this shows that when a mind that is free from the three afflictions is employed in practice seeking the awakening of a hearer, then that is what will be attained. The dharma of the solitary realizes is next. So they see samsara as suffering as well. They also see that from the condition of ignorance, there is formation. Because of this basic ignorance, then various mental formations arise. And that from that, then everything up to old age and death, all of samsara arises. This is a shorthand referring to the teaching on the 12 links of dependent origination. The 12 links, the 12 components of how samsara and its consequences, arise through this chain of causes and conditions. 12 elements in it. And likewise, how these 12 elements can be reversed. When you abandon this, then this happens, then you abandon this, then this, then this, then this. So it's said that the solitary realizers primarily kind of gain their freedom through training and meditating on this. They see that when dependent origination, the antidote to delusion, is employed in practice, samsara is relinquished. Thus, they reverse these links of dependent origination. How? When ignorance ceases, karmic formation ceases. From that, everything up to old age and death also is done with. And the result, the awakening of a solitary realizer, is attained. So when the mind that is free from the three afflictions is trained with this aspiration, then the results come accordingly. So this result then comes accordingly. The result of a solitary realizer. And then Kyoba addresses, an issue that I think, like among those who pursue philosophical studies in that time, are focused on. So he says, moreover, with respect to the self of a person. So we, in generally it is said, there are two types of lack of self. Lack of self as it pertains to persons, and lack of self as it pertains to phenomena. The two types of lack of self. According to the Mahayana system, one becomes a complete and perfect Buddha when these two types of mistakes with regards to the status of self, both as it pertains to persons and as it pertains to phenomena, are completely cleared, completely abandoned. Then one becomes a Buddha. So here, what Kyoba is doing is in part addressing some of the monks, in his audience who have studied these things. And who have studied more to the point, what is the difference between a complete and perfect Buddha, a solitary realizer, and a hearer with regards to these two types of self? The mistaken minds with regards to these two types of self. So this is what he's addressing in this short paragraph here. Moreover, with respect to the self of a person, the hearers realized that the object clung to in the notion of an I or self is not found among the five aggregates. Thus, they realize the selflessness of the person. So he begins first by talking about, for the hearers, in terms of the lack of self as it pertains to persons and the lack of self as it pertains to phenomena, the hearers realize completely the lack of self as it pertains to persons. What about solitary realizers? Solitary realizers also have that realization that there are no selves to be found in persons. What about phenomena? It says here, they realize half of that. And what half? What half? And then he quotes, Ornament of Clear Realizations. The path of the rhinoceros-like practitioners, this is referring to solitary realizers, just as a rhinoceros has one tusk, solitary in that sense. And the path of the rhinoceros-like practitioners eliminates the notion of grasped objects, but not that of a grasping consciousness. Meaning, with regards to self of phenomena, they can see that phenomena don't have selves. Solitary realizers, fully and completely, they can see that. But what they don't see is the mind that perceives phenomena to be lacking self also lacks self. the minds, the moments of consciousnesses that is perceiving. That is only possible for full and complete Buddhists. So here, the lack of self as it pertains to person is one realization. The lack of self as it pertains to the objective part of phenomena, and then the lack of self as it pertains to the subjective part of perceiving phenomena. It's actually divided into three then. The two separates into three because the second one is further divided into two. So all three awakenings, the first one, the lack of self as it pertains to persons, all three levels of awakening universally would get that. Hearers only get that. Solitary realizers get that, and first half of the second. Complete and perfect Buddhas get 1 and 2, both parts of 2. Like they get it. Okay, again, I think in practical terms, right? You and I, it's like, well, okay, well, that's nice. Like for all intents and purposes, right? This is more answering these questions of like, but if the three levels of realizing awakening is all the same, how come they are again different? Why not just say that it is one and not two and not three, It's to answer those questions. Then you have to, pour through, right? Read through all the sutras and see, well, what do they say, And then finally, those who further elaborate the path after the passing of the Buddha have to find research, and this is the kind of the consensus of what the difference is. So what are we going to do with information like this? Or what can we do with information like this? I would say, well, to me, it's calling us to not underestimate, the profundity of what is being realized with selflessness of persons, or the lack of self of person, and the lack of self of phenomena. That the lack of self of phenomena is not so easily realized, because even those who are solitary realizers, only get half of that picture. What about you and me? Yeah, sometimes when we hear like, oh, the hearers, they only realize, the lack of self as it pertains to persons. And then you think, oh, whereas I am going for both, Then you read a little bit about these things, You hear a little bit about these things and you think, yes, I got it. It's like, hello, not so easy. Even solitary realizers, only get 1.5 of this. The last section of this, the phrase, not the notion of a grasping consciousness, is referring to the quote, refers to the mental continuum in the meditative absorption on the path of cultivation of the solitary realizers. Here it is called grasping. Not exactly clear, what this is talking about. To the best that I can discern, this is saying, because here not the notion of a grasping consciousness, it pertains to how the solitary realizes eliminates the notion of grasp objects but they have not yet eliminated the notion of grasping consciousness. And so he's just elaborating on that. And then he says, so here it is called grasping. So I think this is what, I think maybe what he's saying here is, maybe this could be translated as, I don't know, I didn't look at the Tibetan, but even if I look, probably I don't have a clue. Here, I think, from the context, I think it's saying, and the key word here is grasping. So don't think that, the goal is to eliminate consciousness, to destroy mind. No, we're talking about grasping. The grasping consciousness. Consciousness that involves grasping, that is what we eliminate. The grasping part, not the consciousness part. Third, the mind that the bodhisattvas employ in practice is free. Likewise, it needs to be free from the three afflictions. But what does it have that the other two types don't have? Bodhicitta. Their resolution to become a Buddha. Their resolve to become Buddhas. And so here is very interesting, this section, some information that comes. So then, citing, probably Shantideva again, and maybe Shantideva got this from some sutras, It says there are three ways, you can think of it, insofar as giving rise to bodhicitta. Their resolution to become a Buddha can be made in three ways: like a leader, like a boatman, and like a shepherd. The one that is like a leader is the aspiration to first attain Buddhahood, then first become a leader, then as a leader help others. The boatman-like is to attain Buddhahood simultaneously with all beings. And then the shepherd one is to first help all beings to Buddhahood, then oneself becomes a Buddha. This next part is the one that is interesting to me. And truthfully, I don't know what to make of this. Drakpa Jungne. So here clearly is Drakpa Jungne, because Jikten Gönpo, although hard to say. Okay, normally Jikten Gönpo nowadays we say is referring to the founder of Drikung, Jikten Gönpo, Jikten Sumgön. Jikten Gönpo or Jikten Gönpo. Gönpo is Lord or Protector, Nata, Lord or Protector, Gönpo. Sumji Gönpo, Protector of the three. Three what? The three realms, the three planes of existence. Jikten is Jikten Sum is the three planes of existence, the three worlds, meaning the world of forms, the world of senses, the world of forms, and the formless world. These three realms in samsara. Jikten Sumgön, or here Jikten Gönpo. So if we only know this, then we may say, wait, is Jikten Gönpo referring to himself? Jikten Gönpo made the resolution like the boatman. Well, that's one possibility, but not likely that he is referring to himself. Then the other possibility is Drakpa Jungne's editorial notes, which is not clearly marked in these texts. So he could be saying Jikten Gönpo, Jikten Sumgön. And here, so he says here, or whoever it is that says this, says Jikten Gönpo made the resolution like the boatman resolution, which is aspiring to awaken to unsurpassed awakening, together with all beings. So that's kind of interesting, you know. And in other places, they say, for example, Shakyamuni made the aspiration of the leader-like. And so he became Buddha. Now he's helping us. In this case, it's saying, Jikten Gönpo uses the boatman way. Then going down, it says, and then Manjugosha, meaning Manjushri, he made the resolution of the shepherd-like, which is aspiring to establish beings in the state of Buddhahood before becoming a Buddha himself. Then this one quote from this Manjushri, a sutra that is focused on Manjushri. As for me, awakening to Buddhahood in the hasty manner doesn't interest me, meaning quickly attain Buddhahood. For the sake of a single being, I will practice until the kalpas end. So emphasizing his resolve that no matter how long it takes, you know, I'm not going to take the shortcut. Now, here, one possibility of who Jikten Gönpo is also Jikten Sumgön's teacher, Pamodrupa. We know that, you know, how Jikten Sumgön, the person we call Jikten Sumgön, let's call him by his ordination name, his dharma name, Rinchen Pel, Rinchen Pel, or Ratnashri. Rinchen Pel wasn't always called Jikten Gönpo or Jikten Sumgön, the most common name we now use. In fact, he used that expression to call his teacher. Oh, Jikten Sumgön, meaning Lord Protector of the Three Worlds. He called Pamodrupa with that. And it is an epithet of Avalokiteshvara. In the prayer to the 21 praises to Tara, it's there. It's an epithet of Avalokiteshvara. So Jikten Sumgön would call his Lama, his guru, Oh Jikten Gönpo, Oh Jikten Sumgön. Eventually his teacher said to him, you call me Jikten Gönpo? Actually, you are Jikten Gönpo. And that is how the start of Ratnashri being called Jikten Gönpo or Jikten Sumgön. So here is possible, you know, that Gyalpa is actually talking about his teacher. There is one possibility. But anyway, this section is kind of, you can see the kind of extemporaneous nature of these teachings, you know. And then if it's puzzling to you, you're like, he's digressing. Then you have to understand, you know, again, he's teaching to an assembly, to a group, and he may be answering questions or doubts that certain people in the assembly is thinking about. So he says here, some may now object that this would mean that Manjushri, would have been a bodhisattva with great desire, but this is not so. Because here, right, Manjushri says, I'm not going to. My resolve, my desire is not to go the quick way, I'm going to go the long way. Then Jikten Sumgön, Gyalpa Rinpoche used this as an occasion, as an excuse for him to say, no, beings with great desire cling to the extreme, that is samsara, and perpetually lack the aspiration to attain Buddhahood. Also, the Venerable Maitreya explains that there are two kinds of beings that will perpetually be unable to attain Buddhahood. Those with sweeping contempt for the Dharma, and beings with great desire. Therefore, Manjushri's vow isn't like that. Isn't like that of a being with great desire. I think in part, right, again, regardless of who Gyalpa Rinpoche may be addressing in this initial audience, again, I like to think about what is our take-home lesson. What are we to do with this information? Here, I think it has something to do with sometimes when we make these vows, make these aspirations, I will achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all beings, no matter how hard it takes, la la la. Or sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want you to suffer. I want you to be free from suffering. Be careful that it doesn't become a source of suffering. Be careful that it doesn't deteriorate into becoming a great desire. And the difference between the aspirations of a bodhisattva and the desire that is afflicting, that is causing suffering, there is a difference. Just because we desire beings to be free from suffering doesn't mean that they will be free from suffering. And sometimes, those of us at least emotionally attracted to the idea of the bodhisattva path, we suffer so much when we look around and see all the sufferings of others. And then we think, oh, automatically this means, oh, this is what bodhicitta means. Or this is what we should do. It's not. The great aspirations of bodhisattvas to benefit beings, to free beings from suffering, is not to be confused with the great desire that afflicts. The desire that afflicts. So then this is related to, I think, in part, what we say, pray, praying for others. Making dedication prayers for others. A few lessons back, I said, I've been thinking about this, like how do we formulate our prayers, our praying for others in a way that is in accord, with the Buddha's teachings on karma, in the Buddha's teachings on what is the problem and what is the solution, right? So I said, just to quickly repeat myself, one extreme, as Dharma practitioners, may be this attitude of like, oh, no amount of my praying, is really going to help the other person. So this is a very rigid view of karma, and in fact, not understanding the complexity of karmic causality. But some of us, like maybe not even intellectually, but more like on the gut level, we are like that. We're like, people say, oh, please pray for me. And we're like, well, happiness and suffering, it's your business. What can I do? And maybe even we are being humble. We're like, I cannot even help myself. How in the world am I going to pray for you? One extreme. The other extreme is to pray for others. The kind of common way of praying for others, as if, if I pray hard enough, the gods will listen to me, and then I can get someone out of a pickle. That I can solve other people's problems. That's the other extreme. That is called I would call it, that is the eternalism kind of extreme. And the first one is the nihilism kind of extreme. So the middle way that is free from the two extremes of praying for others, what is it? It's to pray, to say, by the power of my merit. And then Jikten Sumgön taught us to not just think about your own merit. The moment you think of other people's merits, that moment, when you think of other people's merit and you rejoice, then you have participated in their merit. This also applies with, it also some lessons here about if you think about other people's faults, you have also become implicated in their faults. So be careful. So here, thinking of not just my own merit, but thinking of the merit of others, particularly the great merit of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the great merit of all the successful, famous, people that you can think of, all of that merit, you say, by the power of all these merit, may this power become a condition for others to be free from suffering, to achieve happiness. And then, if there are more specific cases that you're praying for, may so and so, with this particular problem, may all these merit serve as a condition for their freedom from this problem or that problem. Often we have the causes, but without the right conditions, the causes cannot ripen. And this works both ways, both positive causes and negative causes. With regards to negative causes, we want to stay away from negative conditions, meeting those negative causes to come into fruition. With regards to our positive causes we have created, we want to constantly expose ourselves to positive conditions so that the positive conditions can work hand in hand with the positive causes, and then positive results, positive experiences, desirable experiences would arise. So today we end with dedication, with this understanding of dedication, and we do the simple but very profound bodhicitta dedication. Chanchu sem chorim boji ma ke pa nam ke gyurji ke pa nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du BODHISATTVAS. Okay, tata, goodbye everyone. See you tomorrow, and if you are participating in Drikung Dhammakirti, we meet tonight. See you there. Otherwise, adios.
Thank you. Thank you so much.